The original conception of the wall was that it really was the wall of a building that's going to be built to the west. And it would be, the size of that wall would be the size of the original fort wall. And that wall was going to be glass. One of the interesting discussions we had throughout the period of development was whether we move toward more and more information and really finely described physically, or we go to more crude kind of rough statements and approximate statements and metaphorical statements. And by the time we were done, which I'm very glad about, the nature of the graphic statements became much more metaphorical and crude from one point of view, but much more powerful, I think.
We wanted the illustrations to have the appearances similar to, like, you know, early cave paintings, something that would have been sort of scrawled. The fact that the wall was made out of steel, and that was the material that the architects decided to go with, really determined a lot of the process that was put into, like, how the illustrations were developed. Ultimately, it was the 3 layers of lines being able to interplay with each other to get just a little more detail. So the 3 lines are continuous, none of them ever overlap, and none of them ever actually, like, they can't loop back on each other, all because of the constraints of the steel cutting. And that made for some really interesting challenges, but really interesting results in the illustration as well. The illustrations represent the history of Manitoba, and if you follow it from south to the north, it's actually a fairly accurate chronological timeline.
So we did lots of tests. We had steel cuts tested out to see how fine of detail we could get cut into the steel. We had all those different projectors and TV screens. Remember, we had one set up on the desk here running all night, and the board members were coming by to see how it looked like through glass, and pretty much all of them getting scrapped because they weren't working the way we hoped. And everybody wanted to see it be like as close to perfect as they could achieve. So nobody wanted a kind of a partially done solution. So that led us to keep chasing it.
One of the great pleasures of the last 6 years on this project is that it's a very big project, very expensive project, and has a very large team behind it. We invented the idea, but it came out of a challenge from somebody else, and issues came up, but the technological requirements grew exponentially throughout the project.
Nobody had really ever produced an LED wall at that resolution, and it was really hard to figure out if it would produce images that were of good quality and that would be of equal quality to the rest of the park and, you know, in the wall in and of itself. It has so much potential to evolve over time. I can't even predict what people are going to come up with and how it'll be utilized by, you know, artists and students and teachers, and how they're going to incorporate them into their lessons.
We see it as a 400-foot long piece of sculpture more than we see it as anything else.
how often do you ever get to bring back a piece of history? And that's really cool.